Alrighty, we're starting this over. I had a 27-minute video and all the audio cut out at 50 seconds, and I did not realize. So that's pain, a lot of pain. All right, that out of the way. Welcome to my English 263 book censorship presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about a very famous book and a wonderful author. And I will reveal who that is in a moment. The book today that I'm going to be discussing that was censored or banned is The Hate You Give. The Hate You Give was published in 2017. And I remember reading this in middle school, just a little bit after it came out, and it swept the nation just kind of with its iconicity, the demographic of the issues that were going on at the time, and just kind of what would continue to happen. This book focuses on Star, our protagonist, Star, spelled Starr, and we'll talk about multiple racial divides in the United States, mostly centered around her best friend's death, her childhood friend's death, Khalil. This is a fictional story. However, it is based on a lot of real events that did happen that sound almost completely identical to what the story describes. The Hate You Give, the main plot driver is that Khalil and Star were at a party. And at this party, there was a lot of alcohol, a lot of drinking, a little bit of discourse, and the police eventually arrive. And so Star and Khalil dip. They get the hell out of there. And eventually a police officer pulls Khalil over and starts questioning him. And Khalil is being a bit of a smart aleck, a smart ass, more like it, and isn't really cooperating. The police officer then asks him to step out of the car. Once again, not cooperating. He was told to stay leaning against the car. He instead decides to lean in to grab his hairbrush. As my hair is a little poofy, but Khalil's was described to have some styled hair that needed some grooming at that moment, apparently. And this leads to Khalil being shot, which is absolutely awful because he is killed over a hairbrush. I mean, he is killed over a hairbrush in the grand scheme of things. And this sparks the novel's plot. Star goes on this journey of advocacy and trusting herself and realizing that this was not a just action. This book talks about just general protesting and being able to share your voice and express what you believe is important and what needs to be talked about. And it talks a lot about the racial divide between white and black people, especially white officers and African Americans. That is not why, though it is, or I guess not that it's not why, but that's not the full story. This book also talks about race mixing, which is between her boyfriend, Chris, who is a white boy, and Star, who is a darker skinned black girl. Talks about this concept that unfortunately African Americans hold dear to their heart, and it's this anti-rhetoric of mixed races and mixed race children and mixed race marriages, especially between a white and a black person. Star's father is very against her dating Chris when he finds out about the relationship, and is racist himself, and colorist even, where you don't wish to see a black and white person together dating in any sort of romance. And it's rhetoric that says you do not support the idea of an existence of people like me. I'm half black. I look like this, but I am half black. And the idea that you wouldn't want your daughter or son dating someone who is white or black because your race is white or black is anti-me. You don't wish for my parents to be together. You don't wish for my existence. And that's a topic that's very discomforting to talk about and have be so openly accepted by one of my communities, which I typically criticize the African American community with this because there's a lot of claiming that there's nothing wrong. And Angie Thomas in The Hate You Give doesn't exactly disagree with this concept. But once again, this is not what gets it banned. Star's journey with advocacy doesn't get this banned. The discussions of poverty and institutionalized racism doesn't get this banned. It doesn't get banned due to the racist stereotypes that are perpetuated towards Black people in this text and in the United States. It's not the code switching of how Black you can be around certain people. It's the fact that there's a lot of anti-police rhetoric. And there's a lot of cursing, a lot of cussing, a lot of bad words in this book. And Caddy, Texas, and its residents and governing peoples didn't appreciate this. That's where it's censored. That's where it's banned. In Caddy, Texas. Texas, a very pro-police state. And The Hate You Give criticizes white men, typically, but white male police officers pulling over and killing Black people, seemingly because they can. That's where a lot of the advocacy comes in. And it talks a lot about how Black people have to constantly remind the nation that this is still going on and it is happening and it is real and it's a real experience and it's something we need to take seriously and how it affects the communities around it. It keeps these poor communities poor and it keeps dividing our nation. And that's ultimately what gets this book banned, is the idea that we can actually address this issue, but it's not seen as an issue. It's seen as a complaint or just this one time, just this one bad apple. But it happens too frequently for it to be a bad apple. As much as I don't wish to see police forces defunded or completely dissolved, because I believe we do need the police, we need a reformation. And this book doesn't really talk about reformation. It talks about getting rid of police and having them fired and having their lives ruined, and when it's deserved and when it's not entirely deserved, where it's like you just happen to be a cop, you're the enemy. That rhetoric is what got it banned, but that's how it's described to be. In the book, it's more of an anger of what has happened. It's not really this, it's not a kill all police rhetoric. It's a we need to stop police from killing rhetoric. And overall, I believe that's a positive thing to talk about, but it's not agreed upon. And with our amazing author, not Angie Thomas, but another great author, is Judy Blume. Judy Blume, as I put it. She had 4 books banned or censored due to their content as well. Let me move my camera. I don't know if you can see this right. It's a good place. Judy Blume is an iconic young adult author, and she made 4 books. She wrote 4 books. One being Forever, Blubber, Deanie, and Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. These books address a few key topics. One is bullying, one is a religious relationship. But what unites all 4 is definitely a pubescent and sexual nature between all 4. Some believe her books to be sexually explicit and crude. And that's what got these banned. Ultimately, I think the reasoning behind this stuff and why it was banned was because of the idea that women don't really experience sexuality and wanting to desire, seek out sex. Women? No. Couldn't be true. And it can't be true that they go through puberty. Nope, no such thing as puberty. Just put the pad on and the tampon in or whatever. The bleeding that you experience, ignore it. It's there. It's traumatic. And you're just going to deal with it, and we're not going to acknowledge it. Judy Blume didn't like that. And so she said, I'm going to talk about it. And not only talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it in a positive light, in a relatable way. She loves talking about and exploring these themes. And she does so in a very, very wonderful way, where it's not a sexualization of these topics. It's just an explanation through lived experience. It's, hey, I went through this. All the other girls are going to as well. So here it is. We have sex. Judy Blume seems to write characters that like sex. It's not this gross thing. It can be uncomfortable, and she does talk about that. But it's also not this violent, hot, crazy thing. It's also this casual, kind of like this is normal. This is something that people do. You need to be responsible, but this is something people do. And she talks about it in a very positive light for women. If you have sex, you're not going to immediately get pregnant, and then you have to have an abortion, and then you're killed. Like it's not like that all the time. It's a wonderful experience. It's an awkward experience. It's a weird experience. It's a fun experience. And it's something that everyone is going to think about at least. Maybe not always do immediately the moment you think about it and find someone to do it with, but it's something that you're going to think about. It's going to be a driver or a factor in your relationships, almost every single one that is romantic. And that's okay. And both women and men alike, I believe, held a very misogynist or internalized misogynist viewpoint that said that's not okay. Can't do that. Can't allow it. And the funny part is that a lot of married women who thought with their own minds, regardless what their husband thinks, though the husband agreed, they said, hey, these books are a no-no. These books need to go. They're gross. They're disgusting. They're vile. Do you understand what's in these books? Yes, of course. The publishers know because they published the book. Within the documentary that Judy Blume was in, she discusses how confusing it was to have people want this banned. It was depressing, and it was traumatized because these were very real lived experience. Blubber talked a lot about bullying, and Blubber, though the girl in the illustration, is the one who's made fun of for being fat, and she's not. Yeah, blubber, like blubber means fat. It is whale fat. That's what blubber is. And you're being called the whale, which is one of the fattest things you could be. And you are a normal girl. And that's something you don't like talking about? How bullying sucks? That's uncomfortable? It's stupid. Like the reason there is no reason behind this. There is the debate of like how old can someone be before we start talking about sex. And regardless of what your personal opinion is, these books were never meant to, and it's obvious they were never meant to glorify the idea of kids having sex. It was that teens do have sex and they do pursue it, and it does happen. And that's okay because it's a part of life. These aren't 4-year-olds or prepubescent people doing sexual acts, especially not towards adults. These are not problematic situations. These are real. These happen, and they're not negative at all. And that's why this was banned. Was because of those sexual natures. Oh, and she curses in the book sometimes. And that wasn't like just like with Angie Thomas's book here. There's a lot of cussing. The N word, the hard R, the A ending. I think the hard R is only like once. But the N word is used. The F word is used. The SH word is used. The A word is used. Any word you can think of that you would call a cuss is absolutely in this book. And it's not done so in a edgy teenager way. It's done so in a way where that's how it's present in African American communities and how it's present in schools with teenagers. Where if you think your teenage child isn't cussing, oh, how dumb you are, because they are cussing. They're saying things they think they're not allowed to say, and that's one of the connectors between Judy Blume's experience with having her books banned and my chosen book and it being censored or banned. Another driving connector, I think, is misogyny. I don't think it's as present with Angie Thomas's text here, but the fact that we have a female character kind of driving this story and it gets banned, I think is a little ironic. I think Judy Blume having multiple books that were banned with female leads is horrible because one, historically, women were not really allowed to lead in a story, and we get that with Judy Blume over and over and over again. And we have books that talk about very important female experiences that are banned. And though with Angie Thomas's realistic fiction story here, Black men are killed significantly higher to this day by police officers. And to kind of lead that story through the lens of a Black woman possibly rubbed people the wrong way, that are against The Hate U Give being read, maybe even outside of Katy or Katy, Texas. I've heard both pronunciations. I'm going to go with Katy. I will say both. It's not Kate. Anyways, The Hate U Give, though it has kind of that debate of a female-led idea leading a more male issue, at least historically and statistically, the fact is that having a female-led story and it being so good and being so real and raw and it being banned is ironic considering Judy Blume's books and why they were banned. I believe that banning lived experiences is one of our big connectors here, where these books were too real. These books were hitting the mark a little too hard. It was too much of a bullseye. We see that with movies and other media where if, especially in the United States, where if children are in peril, it's this abomination of a film and it's got to be banned or censored. And we can't let people see this. Children are at risk, but children are at risk. Children do get killed. They are persecuted and they are victims. And sometimes that happens and it's done in storytelling. But in the United States, a lot of those medias where it talks about these issues are censored. And there's a warning and there's all these things where in other countries you don't see that. And I feel like lived experiences are some of the most uncomfortable to talk about because they're real. And solely because they're real. And I think the last driving factor is just the subjects. It's gendered versus racial, I would say. But it's the uncomfortable subjects that the majority, and if you want to talk about the majority race, that's white. And we have a lot of criticisms of whiteness and how white officers behave that are in Angie Thomas's book. You could say white male officers as well if you wanted to bring a gendered idea into it. But it's more focused on race and how that's the dominant person is a white person. And then the dominant gender in when it comes to power and decision making and who gets to decide what, typically it's a man. And you're banning a lot of female experiences, female puberty, female sex drive, female sexuality, female bullying, female body issues, female. You see that repetition there. I said the word. Repeating a lot. You see that a lot. Frequently with Judy Blume's books being banned. I think that's one of the main drivers of these connecting factors between these books is when the people who are the majority in the country who don't experience the issues in the same light are basically told, hey, my story is here and it's real and it makes you uncomfortable. And so these people respond with, well, let's get rid of it. We don't need it then. Because they don't go through it, so it must not be needed, necessary, nor allowed. And I think that that's a very negative viewpoint, unfortunately, with these books, as the more we continue to censor and hide, the more we're doomed to repeat history, and we continue making the same old mistakes, and we continue having the same old problems. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And thank you for watching my video. See you.